The year is 1942. You are in the middle of the North Atlantic. It is pitch black. In the darkness, unseen, a torpedo strikes home. This is the 50th merchant ship sunk this week, the 200th this month. Great Britain, the last bastion of freedom in Europe, is starving. Its factories are grinding to a halt, out of fuel. Its people are rationing bread. Everything it needs to survive, oil, food, tanks, men, must cross this ocean. And out here, in this frozen, lethal expanse, Germany is winning. The wolf packs, groups of German U-boats, are mauling the Allied convoys. We're told the story of the Battle of the Atlantic is a duel, a classic showdown between the scrappy Allied destroyer and the cunning U-boat. But this is a lie. The truth is, in 1942, the destroyers were losing. They were blind. They were sailing in circles, guarding a 30-square-mile box of ships, while the wolf packs gathered just over the horizon, unseen, unheard, waiting for the sun to go down. The destroyers couldn't find the U-boats until a torpedo hit a ship. They were always reacting, always too late. So, what changed? How did the Allies go from catastrophic, certain defeat to total, crushing victory? How did the U-boat losses in May of 1943 suddenly spike so high that the German U-boat commander Admiral Dönitz had to pull his entire fleet from the Atlantic? It wasn't a bigger gun. It wasn't a faster ship. It was a secret, an invisible weapon. A weapon that for the first time allowed the Allies to stop guessing and start hunting.
To understand how the Allies won, you must first understand the genius of their enemy. Admiral Karl Dönitz. Dönitz knew his U-boats were, individually, weak. They were slow on the surface, and even slower underwater. A single destroyer could kill a U-boat, if it could find it. So, Dönitz rewrote the rules. He would not fight fair. He invented the Rudel tactic, the wolf pack. It was a simple, lethal concept. A single U-boat would spot an Allied convoy, but it would not attack. Instead, it would surface and do the one thing the Allies thought was a weakness. It would get on the radio. It would transmit a short coded message back to headquarters in France, reporting the convoy's position, speed, and course. Then, headquarters would broadcast that information to every U-boat in the area. Over the next 48 hours, a pack of 10, 15, even 20 U-boats would converge, guided by radio, like wolves tracking a herd. And they would wait for darkness. They would surface at night, fast, agile, and nearly invisible, and strike as a coordinated team, overwhelming the few destroyer escorts. This radio communication was the key to their entire strategy. It was also, they believed, perfectly safe. And the wolf packs had a sanctuary. They called it the Black Pit, a vast 600-mile gap in the middle of the Atlantic. It was too far for Allied planes flying from America, too far for planes flying from Great Britain or Iceland. In this pit, there was no air cover. The destroyers were alone. They were blind. They had ASDIC, sonar, but it was only useful after they already knew a U-boat was nearby. It couldn't find a U-boat 20 miles away in total darkness. The U-boats owned the Black Pit, and the Black Pit was where the war was being lost. In March 1943, the breaking point came. In a single 20-day period, wolf packs sank 97 ships. The system was collapsing. The Allies didn't need a better destroyer. They needed a miracle. They needed to solve two problems. One, how do you find a U-boat that doesn't want to be found 20 miles away in total darkness? Two, how do you close the Black Pit? The answers would come not from a shipyard, but from a laboratory.
The British had a secret. A very, very big secret. They had cracked Enigma, the German High Command's unbreakable code, at Bletchley Park. But this was a double-edged sword. They could read the U-boat command's orders, but this information was strategic. It told them where the U-boats were supposed to be days from now. It couldn't tell a destroyer captain where that U-boat was right now. And what if the U-boat captain just sent a short, tactical message? A message not from headquarters, but to his wolf pack. This is where the other secret weapon came in. It was called HFDF, High Frequency Direction Finding. The sailors just called it Huff Duff. It wasn't a code breaker. It was a compass for radio waves. The Germans knew about direction finding, but their technology was primitive. It was slow. A human operator had to manually rotate an antenna, listening for the signal, trying to find the bearing. It took minutes. The German U-boat signals were intentionally short, just 30 seconds, too fast to be triangulated by the old method. The British and American Huff Duff was a technological masterpiece. It was instantaneous. The moment a U-boat captain 20 miles away keyed his microphone to send his sighting report to the wolf pack, a bright green line would instantly appear on a screen in the destroyer's radio room. A voice would shout over the intercom, "High-frequency direction finding, bearing 040 degrees, 15 miles." The game had changed. The destroyer was no longer blind. It was no longer reacting to a torpedo. It was hunting. The destroyer captain now knew before the wolf pack even gathered exactly where the lead U-boat was. He would peel off from the convoy, charge down that bearing at 25 knots, and suddenly he was the hunter, and the U-boat was the prey. The wolf packs were no longer invisible. But they still had the cover of night, and they still had the black pit. HFDF was only the first part of the solution. The second part would come from the sky. The black pit was a problem of range. The Allies had planes, Cansos, Sunderlands, but they were short-legged. They couldn't patrol the deep ocean. But America had this, the B-24 Liberator. It was designed to drop bombs on Germany, but it had one accidental piece of genius. It had a ridiculously long range. The Allies pulled them off the bombing runs, stripped them of armor and machine guns, and loaded them with fuel. They were called VLRs, very long range. Flying from Iceland, Newfoundland, and Northern Ireland, the VLR Liberators could finally close the Black Pit. For the first time, in early 1943, there was nowhere for a U-boat to hide. But this created a new problem. A U-boat is tiny. The Atlantic is vast. You can't see a surfaced U-boat from 10,000 feet. And the U-boats were surfacing at night. The Allies needed eyes that could see in the dark. This is the secret that truly broke the U-boat. It's ASV, Air-to-Surface Vessel Radar. The Germans knew the Allies had radar. They had even captured an early set, and they had engineered a counter. Every U-boat was equipped with a receiver called Matox. It was a little wooden box that would sniff the air for Allied radar waves. If the Matox buzzed, the U-boat captain knew a plane was hunting him before the plane could see him. He would dive and vanish. For most of 1942, the German counter was perfect. Until the Allies cheated. The Matox receiver could only detect radar on the 1.5-meter wavelength. So, British and American scientists, in total secrecy, developed a new radar, a radar that operated on a 10-centimeter wavelength. It was called microwave radar. This new radar was completely invisible to the German Matox detector. The German U-boat captains were now deaf and blind, and the Allies added one final terrifying flourish. The Lee light.
a 22 million candle power searchlight synchronized to the new radar. Now picture the scene. A U-boat captain is on his bridge. It's 2 a.m. He's in the middle of the black pit. His matox is silent. He feels totally safe. He hears a faint, low rumble. He looks up. Suddenly, at just 1 mile range, daylight appears. A VLR Liberator, guided by its invisible radar, has just flicked on its lee light. The German captain has 30 seconds to get his 700-ton submarine underwater. He will not make it. The planes, guided by radar, armed with depth charges, were now the masters of the night.
The U-boats were now trapped. They couldn't transmit because Huffduff would hear them. They couldn't surface at night because microwave radar would see them. They couldn't hide in the black pit because VLR aircraft could reach them. The Allies now had all the pieces. It was time to stop defending and start attacking. It was time to form the Hunter-Killer Group. This is the real secret weapon. Not a single piece of tech, but a system. Before, destroyers had to choose, protect the convoy or hunt the U-boat. Now, they didn't have to. The Hunter-Killer Group was an offensive weapon. It was a small, cheap jeep carrier and its pack of 4 or 5 dedicated destroyers. Its job was not to stay with the convoy. Its job was to go find the wolf pack. This is how it worked. Step 1. The main convoy's escorts, 50 miles away, get a Huffduff bearing on a U-boat. Step 2. They radio that bearing to the Hunter-Killer Group. Step 3. The destroyers in the Hunter-Killer Group race down that bearing. Step 4. The jeep carrier turns into the wind and launches its planes, TBF Avengers and F4F Wildcats. The planes use their own radar to find the U-boat. The U-boat is now royally screwed. If he stays on the surface, the planes will rocket him. If he dives, the planes will drop sonar buoys and guide the destroyers right on top of him. He cannot transmit, he cannot surface, he cannot run. The result was Black May. In that single month, May 1943, the full integrated system, HFDF, VLR aircraft, microwave radar, and Hunter-Killer groups was unleashed. The result? Karl Donitz lost 41 U-boats in 1 month. It was a rate of loss that was not just unsustainable, it was suicidal. The wolf packs were being annihilated. On May 24, 1943, a stunned Admiral Donitz broadcast a single desperate message to his entire U-boat fleet: cease operations. Withdraw from the North Atlantic. The battle was over. We have the story wrong. We think of war as bombs and bullets and brave men in ships, and the Battle of the Atlantic had all of those. But the real war, the one that actually decided the fate of Great Britain, was a war fought by men in quiet, dark rooms. It was a war of information. The Germans built better submarines, faster, quieter, deadlier. They focused on the weapon. The Allies focused on finding the weapon. They built a system that allowed them to hear a U-boat whisper from 20 miles away, to see a U-boat through solid clouds in total darkness, and to hunt a U-boat from the sky in the middle of an ocean. This victory, this invisible victory, didn't just save Great Britain. It made everything else possible. It made the build-up for D-Day possible. It allowed the full, unstoppable might of American industry, the tanks, the guns, the men, to get to the fight. The secret weapon that won the Battle of the Atlantic wasn't a ship. It was knowing where the enemy was. And in a war of hide and seek, the power to see in the dark is the power to win.